when I was looking at it, just the nature of West Virginia humor and the folks who were known for it. Because a lot of West Virginia writers really weren't. The Jim Comstock and the West Virginia Hillbilly. But great names in comedy such as Soupy Sales and Don Knotts and Bill Lepp, who always wins the Liars contest, and Little Jimmy Dickens, who made the Bird of Paradise Flag, and West Virginia guy. Shifting gears a little bit, and that leads to the question. I also noticed as I looked into your works that all of you're not just exclusively humorous. You can also tackle heavy topics. You've all gone there, or serious, or reported. And I'm just wondering, is that therapeutic? Is it hard to shift gears? Is that another portion of your brain you have to utilize, or is it just opportunity that's what you need to write at that time? Are they harder to write than comedy?
No, I think it's equal. Sometimes humor is a little harder to write than a dramatic piece. And I think you have a little more liberty with fiction and creating your characters and whatnot. If you're writing humor, you have to set up that character to be funny. You can't have them. You can't let anything draw it down. So I feel dramatic fiction is a little easier for me to write.
I like to combine both in a piece because I think it can make the funny funnier and the dark darker.
Very true.
And you asked if it's therapeutic. If anyone came from a dysfunctional family, you'll know that one of the ways people cope is with humor. And so when you write your story and you have the dark in there and you have the light in there, I think it's definitely a way of working through that particular incident. I think it's definitely therapeutic.
Okay. And finally, before we turn it over to Q&A, we just want to talk about the craft of writing humor, and we kind of touched on it because it is true. Doing stand-up comedy, I think comedy is the hardest because it implies that you're going to elicit a specific response over and over again, an emotional response. Or drama and fiction and other, it kind of is a slower build, and you can let an audience kind of absorb it more. But trying to be funny, it either is or sings or it doesn't. Do you use any? When you're writing a comedy piece, are you thinking about the craft at all? It's like the rule of three, or any tricks of the trade that you use that set up punchlines or any of that stuff, or is it just roll?
Some of it's like telling a joke. When you tell someone a joke, you can't leave a part out. You have to build the entire thing, even if it's a short thing. You just with humor writing, you build with character and nuance and slapstick. There's 1,000 things you can use, but it's usually with a punchline.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any formula or anything like that. I mean, besides don't plagiarize. It's. I sort of have a routine. I always read these certain things before each column, and hopefully it'll give me some ideas. But it's like I'll read, of course, the daily paper. Then I'll read Huffington Post. Then I'll read Dave Barry's blog. Then I'll read. I like a guy who works for a Sarasota paper, David Grimes. Read what he says, and sometimes that'll kick loose an idea and get me started. But often I just punt from there too. But I don't know. I try to avoid getting mean-spirited or political, very political. I think everybody reasonably gets to have an idea where I'm coming from, but I don't like to be preachy, or I don't like to read people who are preachy.
It's interesting to have a point of view, but at the same time temperate. Okay, what time is it? Okay. Let's go to some Q&A. And if we don't have any, I've got some more questions. But anybody have some questions for our panelists? individually or as a whole? Yes, sir.
Is there anything subject area that's taboo that you want to make fun of?
Not me.
If it might be taboo, you change names.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
What was the bet you guys had?
Oh, that's taboo.
I'll bet you we don't tell you.
I'll get out of Karin later.
It was easy.
I'll get it out of Karin
It won't
later.
happen again. No, actually, I got to read. I'm going to take that piece on with me, Beth. I'm sorry. Rockettes and tubes. Are you kidding me? Anybody else? Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
When you write humor, are you thinking about, is this going to be funny to somebody else, or is it just funny to you? Everybody has a different sense of humor. So when you write it, are you targeting an audience?
I worry about that all the time because I often laugh at inappropriate things. And
Me too.
And I worry that nobody else is going to think it's funny. And sometimes I will have like a sentence or something in a column that I'm like really excited about. I think it's just hilarious. And my husband is sitting back there in the yellow shirt.
Could you be more specific?
Yeah. But he'll read it and he doesn't get it at all. And I'm like so proud of this line, and it's just, so I know I've missed.
That was on the West Virginia Writers Facebook wall when we were talking about that. Was it Kat or who said you write the piece and it entertains you and it may or may not entertain somebody else.
Yeah.
I make a lot of references to things that nobody else. I feel like that. I understand Gary Larson better because I make a lot of jokes about things that nobody else has ever read or heard of or watched. I am just like, and thank God I've got people that pull that out for me because nobody ever understands it.
But it does have to make you laugh. Before you. That's a good point. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to what I was thinking about was regional humor is oftentimes an inside joke. You understand it better if you live in the area. So how do you open up the inside joke? I mean, that's kind of that's part of the craft, isn't it? How do you open up the inside joke so that people reading your stories see the humor, understand it?
It's like any story. You've got to give the reader, you got to put them to work. You got to give them some ownership. You educate them. It's part of the setup. It's just like a dramatic piece about someone dying in a coal mine. You teach them about mining for a little bit, and you show them what it's like to go home and try to wash the black out. You put them to work. That's how I do it. Not everybody in here is Pentecostal. You have to.
But I would bet there's universal components of it that, regardless of what region it's in, that can strike home. But sometimes that does get in the way. The dialect or the reference points that nobody gets, and the joke is gone. And that is a
If
challenge.
Diane's voice was a couple octaves lower, I could have swore I was listening to Garrison Keillor.
Yeah. Well, that's about all we have for you here tonight. Sidetrack tap. We I feel better a little bit later. Let's see. Any other questions? Okay. I've also, in closing, I have asked each of our panelists to bring us a closing bit, a little anecdote, something they want to share for the good of the order. Leave us lap. Before we do so, I want to point out there are evaluation forms over there. The Book Fest gets better every year because they learn from you all what happened. And if you liked it, fill one out. If you don't, just keep moving. So, for the good of the order, we'll start with Karin and work our way down with our parting shots, so to speak.
What's the best thing to ever come out of Ohio?
Oh. Grader's ice cream.
Interstate 70.
Okay, I'm going to read a piece that's a short one. And when we were talking about like dysfunctional families, the brother in here, John, he's my favorite brother, but don't let that leave the room. Exceedingly angry young man. This is from a piece called Playing Favorites that was on my blog just last month. John isn't my only brother, but for some reason I like him best. I have no idea why. He did, after all, try to kill me once on the chocolate milk-colored sofa in the basement. After I told him no way he was going to my 9th grade prom. He was too old, 2 years and 3 months my senior. And besides, it was my dance, not his. And did he not know what Tammy Carter did with Joey Howard behind the convenient mart? Did he really want to go out with a girl like that? He launched at me, pants all T-Rex clawed, his metal mouth gleaming through a froth, crammed my head into the arm of the couch, choked me until I saw stars, then nothing. Mom, I yelled after I came to. John tried to murder me. I blacked out. I'm serious. She didn't answer. Turned out she was out back picking zinnias and cherry tomatoes.
I'm going to give you another page from the book. This is kind of a flashback from where this mother and child came from. A place called Otter Holler. Carol didn't think Halloween was that big a deal. Of course, she didn't remember that much about it. Back in the holler, all Halloween amounted to was a bowl of popcorn and some pranks. Oh, there was the usual bag of cat shit on fire on somebody's porch or a tossed egg or two. And then there were the Kane boys. The Canes were brave and brazen, and they only found these qualities in a bottle of their daddy's moonshine. So far this Halloween night, they beat up the Fremont boy, lit the gas tank on old Mrs. Wyndon's washing machine on fire, and axed out the floor of Debrick's outhouse. Finally, the brothers got to Helen's little house. Tom Kane, the oldest, knew that Ted was overseas, and the liquor helped him with the rest. He threw a sheet over his head and stood in front of the door. "Trick or treat in there," he howled. Helen glanced through the curtain at the staggering sheet holding an oil lantern. "Oh boy," she said. She quickly got her coat, walked past sleeping Carol, and stepped through the door, quietly pulling it shut. "What do you boys want?" she asked. The sheet staggered forward. "Well, I'm the ghost of Halloween, and I give people what they need, and tonight I'm going to give you what you need, little lady." Then he pantomimed the act of love. The hunching sheet was a sight. Almost to herself, Helen responded, "Sometimes I give people what they need, too." She shifted her coat to one side, and her slender arm raised a Colt hog-leg pistol. The Colt revolver bucked in her hand like a fire-breathing bull. When the gun was empty, Carol stepped into the living room, dropped the revolver on the couch, picked up the Winchester .30 caliber rifle, and returned to the porch. Helen took a couple of final shots above the sheets as they disappeared up the road. "Trick or treat my ass," she whispered. Halloween was over in Otter Holler.
Those are hard acts to follow. When I sit in the Charleston Gazette newsroom, I hear the police scanners going constantly, and sometimes it's the source of some interesting comments. Like I think it was Thursday, there was a call from on the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department, and there was we have a car, a disabled car in the creek. I forget which creek it was, and I thought, well, that's wonder how that got there. Then a few minutes later, somebody called back and said, "We need to get a tow truck there. It's blocking traffic." Living in a place like that, there's humor just following.